trying to get evidence of this little mouse. I just saw a shadow. It slinks. It literally slinks. It's so tiny. Yeah, that was just wishful thinking. They're so fast, mice. I just saw like a little shadow, black shadow there. So unless it's like under here, it seems to like crawling along this wall. But that's. I have relatives coming over today. Literally, one's here, but the others, I don't know. And I will find that little mouse. But what was I gonna say? Oh, I had a memory today. It's like I was watching this movie on baseball, and I was thinking like, because I used to date sports people, and I've dated someone, several different kinds of sports people, and I was like, I sort of had a memory all of a sudden, and it's very disjointed. Like I don't remember the entire context of it, but I had a relationship with someone, and then I realized, oh, it's like just like this movie that I saw recently, and it has this sports star who goes on to fame after obtaining, entry into a Premier League, and then they lost their fame, and before they were allowed to attempt to join the team, they lost their fame and they ended up being dropped by the league. And I was like thinking about that, and I was like having a memory of like this sports star I once dated, because literally I went through a phase of enjoying sports, and so we were like going to all these sorts of sporting events and everything. And I had like a friend with me at the time. I don't know who it was, but it was probably someone I just met. I did once, I've worked for a sports company like 2 or 3 times. Usually I get dumped though within a month because I don't like to drink or anything. But anyway, I was at this game, right? And it was like this not just, it was a fairly, I saw this team, and then I was bothering everyone to sign something that I had. I was asking for his signatures, and like the one of the like younger ones, I guess, was willing to sign what I had, and then I must have gone back there like 2 or 3 times, and like after the third time, because we were making money like selling the signed balls. We literally made like $60,000, literally, and that was just selling like one or two of them. So I must have gotten like three, because I kept one for me, and the other person, I kept one too. So, and then we split the money in half that we made from selling the other ones that we had, and then we're like, the last day that we were going to go to the sporting event, we went there just to thank the guy and tell him that we had sold some of those balls and made $5,000 to $10,000, which wasn't true. We moderated it down to from the amount that we actually received, and then he was like, oh, thank you. And at the time, he really needed to have a relationship with someone because, he had bad press on him. So then he said it was contemplating on asking us out. And yeah, and I ended up dating him for a little while. And it was such a terrible thing though, because I was quite young looking. I was in my 20s probably, but I was still quite young looking, and so it looked really bad, like a disjointed coupling. But Um, but it was like the best fun, um, because you just get like everything's like first class, and so you get like fancy hotels, fancy big homes that have more than 2 stories tall, and and all this other stuff. Literally you live life the same in a way, but it's like it just everything. It's like you're surrounded by everything cushy, and and then we started going to gala events and things, and that's sort of where he got um, a little bit of trouble. And then he ended up being jumped, and his career was sort of ended. So, more than ended. Yeah, so he tried next to be a sports star in another sporting, in another sport, and it's like didn't work. Sort of the transition didn't work. I mean, everyone's double crossing him, like saying that they like him, but then they would turn around and say that they didn't, and some ethical values and a lot of other things. So, whenever he met someone, he'd be like, oh, they're nice and friendly. I want to really impress them. They're really nice to me. They feel like they can, be my friends, and stuff. And I was like, every time like he'd feel that, he'd be like double crossed by them. They'd sort of, slam against him and give him some sort of attitude, and he would be like left in quite severe depression. Yeah, but yeah, he ended up. I literally like left him with these new friends because he said, "Oh, she's just a silly kid. She doesn't know. She thinks that everyone's gonna be like, she what she thinks is like not real." And yeah, I know it's real, and happy to make exchange in platform. And I was like, and what happens? I leave, he gets double crossed, So that was sort of the end of the aspiring sports. It's a very terrible story when that sort of stuff happens, where people can't like trust another person and stuff. It's like he didn't ever want to be like just someone who lives in society. He wanted to be like the best, and it was like it's such a terrible thing. And this movie that I watched just reminded me of it. And I was like, oh, it's so terrible. And I've also dated another sports star who I had a short-term relationship with. We were living in. They were Australian. This other one was Australian, and we were living in this like made up 2 or 3 story house. It was like a mansion, and it was all white walled. He was very into white because he was technically very white, cultured, and he wanted to prove it by having everything like plain white walls. Like a lot of things were like white champagne instead of red champagne, and everything. And he was one of the best at what he did, and he yeah, it was just an amazing experience. He didn't like that he had to be around me all the time. Otherwise, I would get like in trouble with other people. And then, he'd be like, having to stand up for me or excuse my impoliteness with his politeness, because I would create arguments. And not just create them, I would react to other people's negative attitudes, and we'd end up having an argument, and everyone would be like, oh, you don't deserve to be like in the first class box. And it's like, and so I was sort of getting, if he wasn't around, if wasn't nearby, I was getting in trouble with a lot of other people. Like, it doesn't matter if it was a guy or a girl, whoever's around just totally like slams you against you. And he just got sick of needing to be around. He couldn't trust that I wouldn't be picked up by someone, or I wouldn't have an argument with someone, or I wouldn't get into a fight or something like that. So he literally said, "This is we can't. I don't think that it's very safe for you to be with me if this is what it's going to be like," kind of thing. And he ended up exchanging for a sports model who was very blonde and very flawless and very pretty, and so he ended the relationship to be with someone who was so pretty that no one could literally do anything but smile or grow jealous, or and so that no one would have a problem with them. And it's like, and then he ended up being like, "Oh, this is all okay," so this is a lot better and more comfortable. And I think he continued to do sports on his level. I don't remember what he did. I can assume what he did is probably one of the best. But yeah, and that's a couple of people that I sort of dated, but always a haphazard relationship, because they're always lifting you to a social level that you've never actually been able to be. And it's like, socially, like, you're just being slammed out because everyone's like up themselves, and they're like, "Oh, you're not good enough to be here." And it's like, forget the attitude of sportsmanlike, a nice smile equals a pat on the back, and it's like everyone's enthusiastic. It's not like that. It's like a nice smile ends up with an evil twist, and suddenly attitude problems, and then escalated argument, and then just like totally like non-passion. It's like no one's supportive. It's like a big competition, and everyone wants to like win their trophy, and their trophy is to be like the only people in a room, I guess. But I don't know, but it's more difficult than what you imagine. But that's what I would expect. I just jump in and jump out. Really, there's nothing much you can do, unless you're to die for, and I'm not. So it's like, but yeah, I was thinking, if I ever like have nothing to do and I don't know what I'm doing, and everything about COVID gets cleared, so that no one needs to think about vaccinations and clearances and all this stuff anymore, I might go to like the Olympics, or something, just to watch some sports. No, but at the Olympics, everyone's like practically married to their trainers anyway, so you don't have a thing. But I was like thinking, oh, maybe I should get into sports again. I mean, sometimes you meet someone nice who you can hang out with, but I don't really like sports though. I literally never really think about going to a sports event, so I just happened to go to a range with them at one time, and then you end up meeting someone. But most of the time, except for the car racing, I've gone to more car racing than anything else because it's more local. And it's really funny because sometimes like the bandstand that you're on, the seating, sometimes it's fallen down, or a car crashes into it, or a car wheel rolls into it or by it or something. So it's really funny, like to have like, I wonder if like you'll get like a car wheel rolling your way or something, or if a car will slam into it. So that's a funny stuff about the car racing, because anything can happen, especially when you're like a spectator in one of the bandstands, and then you're like going, uh, yeah. Well, I found that funny. I mean, I used to go to them annually because I just wanted to see if anything crashed into where you sat. So, but but yeah, But I don't know what other sports, because no one plays like things like baseball, or people play basketball and football. I don't really get football, but I do watch like football tryouts. I just don't bother with the competitions. But they slide around a lot, and I've sort of, if you go to football tryouts, I mean, there's always someone there scoping you out and say, hey, who are you? And, do you like football? And, they ask you questions. I went to through a few matches at some stage, and whenever I walk past like a football stadium and people are practicing, they bother to walk up to you and talk to you and stuff. And yeah, so it's kind of cool actually, yeah. But I don't usually watch it live. A lot of things I don't watch live. I only used to watch mostly the car racing and sometimes the tennis, but tennis is way too expensive now. It's like, 50, 60, $80 a ticket, and and then the major sports matches like $200 a ticket. But I used to gamble on the tennis, and I was making some. Must have made $2,000 or $3,000, but then they changed the gambling to match win, to win per match, not per tournament, and so literally like it's very confusing, and I was like, it's so confusing because you pick the winner and then you don't win, and you're like, why the hell didn't I win? Didn't they win that match? And I'm like, I don't know. It's so disappointing with gambling. But I did make a little bit of money because they were allowing you to guess the winner, and now it's like guess per match point or something, and it's like ridiculous. So even though like your favorite person might win, you don't know if they'll win the match point, and you're like, it's stupid. Because I used to make money on tennis. I don't anymore, so I stopped. You can also make money. I used to make money on Eurovision, but then I lost and then stopped. And I used to make money on the horse racing, but I can't. But you literally can't go to horse racing, especially not in Victoria, because they're all snobbish, and everyone's like, "Oh, you shouldn't be here because you don't look like us." Like they have like literally like this snobbish family who like, they filter whether or not you're allowed to go in to watch the horse racing or not, and you're like going, that's unfair. But yeah. I don't like that sort of, oh, only we look good and we won't allow you in to watch things unless you look just as good as we do and stuff. It's like I hate that kind of attitude because no one ever looks the best. And you're like going, like, even when people are perfect, people don't necessarily like them and stuff, and you're like going. So it's really stupid for people to pick and choose depending on how people look, because in real life, like, people don't necessarily like these kinds of people. Like, they're probably people who like have a small family. They just happen to either have lots of kids or to stop being loners, or but they're not. They're usually like hanging around in family groups as opposed to actually being popular and stuff. And you're like, that's what you notice nowadays. Like a lot of people just have larger family groups to feel less alone, so that they won't be singled out. So, but anyway. But no, I was watching a speaker. I was like, oh yeah, I sort of half remember like this relationship I had ages ago, and it was like the worst thing. The last thing that I saw of them was like their finger, and I was like, oh, it's like such a sad story. And they were like, yeah, but I don't know. See, sad things happen, and it's mad crazy, but they do happen, and you're like, that's crazy. Yeah. You just wish like everyone could have like the perfect life, but when you realize that they don't, it's like really traumatic actually.